to the cloud. Okay, and then I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure we can hear Bay before we get started. I think they're logging back in. Oh, okay, they're logging back in. Let's see. Okay, try talking again, Bay. I still can't hear you. Do you have headphones? Sometimes that helps. Yes. Let me escape out of this. Oh, geez. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec, y'all, so I can send them a phone number. Okay, I just put the login information into the chat, Rob, so you guys can call in that way. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Just to introduce myself, for any of you who don't know me, I'm Blair Schneider. I'm the program manager for the Trestle project at Trestle Central at the University of Kansas now. You all may have known Stephanie Becker before, so I've taken over her position. I'm going to let Marcia introduce herself. Go ahead, Marcia.
Okay. Hello, I am Marcia McCartney, and I am a teaching specialist in the psychology department here at the University of Kansas.
And once we're able to get her on the phone, I'll let Bay introduce herself. She is at Queen's University. She's one of the postdocs there. And I'm going to share my screen again. So today we just kind of wanted to have an informal session to talk about some of the different types of observational tools that you can use in a classroom. We've used 3 different kinds in particular, and we wanted to, so we don't want to kind of give we don't want to tell you how it works. We're not going to give you a training session on how these work, but what we do want to do is kind of show how you can use them in particular to promote change on your campus. Oh, I see a phone. Is that you, Bay?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead and introduce
Hi,
yourself.
perfect. Sorry about the trouble. So my name is Bei Chai, and sitting next to me is Rob Noble. So I'm a Trussell Teaching and Learning postdoc at Queen's in physics department, and Rob here is a faculty.
Awesome. So we'll have myself, Marcia, and Bay going over three different types of observational tools. We'll talk about TDOP, COPUS, and LOPUS. So I just wanted to start off with these two slides. This is from Hora and Farrar. One of the references we'll give you at the end, and they just give a really nice summary of how you can use these types of observations, using them to provide rich insights of teaching practice at department or institutional levels. That's what we're using a lot with our COPUS project for Trestle. They can give you more accurate accounts of classroom teaching for policymakers. You can use them to kind of explore the relationships between classroom teaching and student learning. We've been really trying to use that at KU, looking at, okay, how can I look at how I'm changing my classroom with the COPUS data, and looking also at student assessments. Students, are they learning what they're supposed to see how those correlate. Of course, my daughter's waking up right now. And then we can also use them to inform us for a faculty professional development session. So that's one thing I'll kind of go over with COPUS. If we have a departmental goal of how we want to teach our classes, we can use some of these observational tools to track that. So we're going to start with TDOP. So I'm going to mute myself and hand it over to Marcia. And Marcia, just tell me when you want me to change the slide, or I'll probably be able to figure it out as you're going through.
Okay, great. That sounds good. So talking about the Teaching Dimensions Observation Protocol, otherwise known as the TDOP. Can I do the slides, or you just have to do them? Okay. So it was developed in 2009 as a study of the cognitive, cultural, and contextual underpinnings of post-secondary teaching practice. It was revised and released in 2014. And it was originally designed to provide descriptions of practice rather than evaluative judgment of the quality of teaching. So there are several different reasons that you might want to use the TDOP. It can be used to diagnose or assess teaching practices at the individual, department, or institutional level. It can assess changes in teaching practices over time as a result of instruction intervention. And it can also provide formative data for peer observations or professional development. So there's three basic dimensions of the TDOP that focus on instructional practices, student-teacher dialogue, and instructional technology. There's also three optional dimensions that are potential student cognitive engagement, pedagogical strategies, and student engagement. I have only used the basic dimensions, so my presentation today will just be on my use of those, but the optional dimensions might be useful to some of you as well, so it's good to know that they are out there. So as far as reliability and validity goes, each of the current codes in the TDOP has been developed in consultation with education experts in order to establish face validity. There is a little bit of a problem with this in that no other types of validity has been performed or analyzed. So that can be a limitation. The TDOP documentation suggests inter-rater reliability for the instrument, which is achieved through training, like it is with most of these. The problem with this is that it does ensure observer reliability, but no actual reliability of the instrument has been performed. So a couple of limitations with the instrument, but otherwise I think it works for my purposes, and hopefully it might work for yours. So as far as the procedure goes that is outlined in the TDOP instructions, you should be meeting with the instructor before the observation to collect information about the class, such as goals for the course, goals for that class in particular, and goals of the instructor. And then every 2 minutes, observers mark the code as it occurs in the classroom. And more than one code may be marked in each 2-minute interval, depending on the complexity of the instructional practice. So for example, in any given 2-minute period, an instructor might be lecturing with a visual aid, asking a display questions, students could be responding, and the instructor could be using PowerPoint or the chalkboard or whiteboard, which are all separate codes in the TDOP. I have used the TDOP in a few different classes along with some of the other postdocs. And so this is an analysis of a film class, basic film production. And so just to show you what's going on here, these are the different codes that were used in the whole class. So, and you can see that this is the percentage of time spent by code. So as you can see, over 35% of the time was spent using multimedia, which makes sense because it's a film class. This person, this instructor also used Socratic lecturing quite a bit. That's the third bar there. And display questions is the fourth bar. And then student responses to those display questions was also coded here quite a bit of the time. Okay, so this is a different way to kind of look at the data you get from TDOP. So this is all of the codes are grouped together under these 5 umbrellas, basically. So these are the results from a geology class, the way the Earth works. These are results are according to percentage of time spent by dimension. In most cases, it's desirable to code multiple codes within a single interval so that the results for a given dimension may sum to more than 100%, just because these are a bunch of dimensions combined together. So I hope that makes sense. I know that's a little confusing for people when they first look at this, but anyway, this is just another way to look at the data. Okay, and this last one is from a psychology class, cognitive neuroscience. So this is an interval analysis of coding. So the instructor spent a lot of time lecturing from pre-made visuals, which you can see on that very first row there. And at the top is the minute, how many minutes each, when all the codes occurred. The chart also shows a lot of different types of coding, which indicates that the instructor broke up the lecture often with student group work and display questions, which you can see on the left-hand side. There's all the codes that were used in this. So this is just a brief case for general psychology. So this is just one instructor's results. So this is for a graduate student instructing a general psychology class. This grad student had 2 semesters prior experience teaching the class. Before I observed her in fall 2014, she verbally told me that her student engagement was important, to her, and that she believed that she spent less than 30% of her time lecturing, which would be here under teacher-focused instruction. I used the TDOP results to show her objectively how much time she was spending lecturing, which was really surprising to her because it was at, looks like 78.9% time spent in different types of lecturing, basically. PP is PowerPoint. Somebody asked that question, so. Sorry, I'm not paying attention to the chat thing. So if you have questions, sorry about that if I'm missing them. Go back. Yeah, sorry. The codes also gave her a direction. She kind of reevaluated her goals. So she set new goals for the spring 2015 semester, which were to spend less time lecturing and find ways to engage students more. So I used the TDOP in spring 2015 and got different results. She spent less time in teacher-focused and teacher-led interactions, and she also doubled the amount of time she spent in student-focused interaction, which you can kind of see there. Okay, and so these are the results for all instructors of Psych 104. Again, general psychology. This class is at KU is taught completely by graduate students, and this is usually their first teaching experience as instructors of record. We do a lot of training for them. So that includes an orientation. They attend weekly team meetings. There's observations with feedback that I do. And they also are enrolled in a teaching practicum along with this. So I observed instructors 4 times throughout the academic year. So twice in the fall, twice in the spring. And this is their results. So you can see here the green bars are all the first observation, blue, second, yellow is the first of the spring observations, and then that last dark green bar is the second observation in the spring. So over the course of the program, instructors are less likely to use teacher-focused instructional techniques, such as lecturing. They're less likely to use teacher-led dialogue as an instructional technique, such as call and response types of questions. They're more likely to use student-focused instruction, such as small group work, and they're less reliant on instructional technology, such as PowerPoint and multimedia, which you can kind of see on that last section, how it's gone down. So a further interesting pattern is the tendency to return to instructor-focused instruction for lessons that have been previously prepared. So if you see between the first observation in the fall and the first observation in the spring, those are both the same course or the same class that I observed. And even though after we met after that first observation and they made lots of good changes, whenever they got back to that first observation in spring, which was the same class, they still went back to those. They were mostly just kind of rehashing their older lesson plan and trying to make it a little bit more student oriented, which they did. It was much better than it was in that first observation in the fall, but it wasn't quite at the levels that it was for that second observation in the fall, which we thought was really interesting. What this says to us is it can be difficult to transform from a previously prepared lesson plan than it is to create a brand new lesson plan whenever you're thinking about what good teaching should look like. I think you can go ahead. Yep. Okay. So a few, well, let me go through the critiques of this first. So the critiques of the TDOP is that it doesn't capture cognitive level of activity students are asked to engage in. If you have teaching assistants in the classroom, there's no way to code for that. And the categories are very broad. It doesn't capture nuance very well, but it does what it's supposed to do. So anyway, but as far as strengths, it is an objective measure of observable behavior. It's very non-judgmental. It can be used to initiate a conversation with instructors about teaching goals, which is how we've used it. And the results can be displayed in a graphical format, which can be very useful to kind of see exactly how all of these things can combine to create your class. I think that's all I have. So thank you.
Any questions for Marcia about TDOP in particular before we show some examples from Copus? I guess I kind of had one question about the grad students. What was their response? Did they like?
Yeah, no, they really like that it's objective. They really respond well. And I mean, this is paired when I give them feedback. It's paired with some qualitative feedback that I give them about what I've observed as someone with expertise in teaching. And I can use these objective results to kind of support that. But they really like seeing that it's not just like one person saying, hey, you should do this differently or whatever. So they really like seeing these charts. They also like seeing how they've progressed. So many of them have asked me for to share these with them so they can add them to teaching portfolios so they can show this growth in teaching that they've been doing. So that's pretty cool for them. So thank you.
Sorry. Another question too. So when you go in for the observations, are you planning the same lesson each time that you go in, or is it kind of random? You can go in whenever.
I did that for the first couple of years whenever I was doing observations for Psych 104 for General Psych, just because it was a new program that we were trying to really evaluate and really get off the ground and really provide a solid base of teaching for these instructors. So I was trying to do the exact same classes, so that would be a nice comparison for the instructors, but also for me for this type of presentation. But now that the program's gotten underway and we really see where the training is and we really see what kind of pitfalls everybody's making, we can address those without having to go in and do as many observations necessarily. So now I think we're only doing observations once a semester, and we are going to do different classes. The first one I think we just kind of pick, and then the second one we have asked students, which one do you want us to come in and observe? Pick your best class or pick your worst class, whichever one would be most useful for you as you're thinking about teaching. All right, thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself there. I also can't tell if you all can see all the faces on the screen like I can, so I'm like trying to get it out of the way. I'm not used to having a single screen when I'm doing this. So I just wanted to talk to you about Copus. This is what we've been using for the Trestle project. And I like Copus because I've kind of gotten to see both sides of it when I was a grad student. I was one of the GSFs that was trained or developed part of the training protocol that we use at KU. And now I run all the observations, so it's kind of a nice two-sided view. So this was developed as part of the Carl Wyman Science Education Initiative, and it's actually adapted from the TDOP. So people that were using TDOP felt that it wasn't like it didn't quite capture what some of the things that they were doing in STEM courses, and so that's really why Copus came around. They were really trying to focus on activities that happen in STEM classrooms. Can get it to go. There we go. So very similar to TDOP, objectively captures live classroom activities. You use 2-minute time intervals, and you look at student and instructor actions. It does not assign quality ratings. That's one of the things I like the most about it. You're really just showing like this is what happened in your classroom. But that's always also the first question I get when I'm talking to faculty with their results is, you know, how good did I do? And I'm like, well, that's not always necessarily the point, but obviously I understand why that's the first question too. So I'll talk about that later. It does require an observer coming to the classroom. I won't go through any of these in detail, but just showing, you know, for students, we look at, are they listening? Are they answering questions? Are they doing whole class discussions? And it gets rather specific when looking at group work. Are they working on worksheets or other activities? Are they doing clicker group discussions or just clicker questions in general? So those are tend to be more specific to STEM. And then it also codes what the instructor's doing. So are they lecturing? Are they asking clicker questions? Are they moving through groups and guiding things? One of the nice things they do with instructor codes here too is they really emphasize our instructors presenting or our instructors guiding. So if they're kind of, you know, in your more traditional lecture format, they're mostly just presenting, but if they're doing group work or just doing individual work and they're kind of walking through and guiding and helping students, that gets coded as this guiding category to kind of show that difference. So you can interpret, it's not supposed to be qualitative, but you can interpret some qualitative aspects from that. Sorry, Rachel's not happy right now. So we can use Copus data to provide quantitative information on our teaching practices, and we can use it same with TDOP at individual, departmental, or institutional level. And I'll show you 3 examples of those. If we combine it with student assessment data, it can give us opportunities to compare the impact of different teaching practices. And we've had instructors use Copus data in different ways. So on our campus, we've actually had them incorporate Copus data into their teaching portfolios. Or you can use this, you know, with T&P, tenure and promotion, to kind of show, you know, I'm changing my teaching practices and I'm focusing on how students are learning in my classrooms, things like that. So on an individual level, here's some things that we're doing. On the KU campus, every time we go out and we collect observations for a classroom, we'll do 3 observations. We always develop these reports. So after the 3 observations, we send these out to the instructors and we let them know, okay, you know, here's what happened in your class, these 3 class periods. And you can either like read it over, and if you have any questions, we'll meet with them one-on-one, or if they happen to have a postdoc in their department, we tell them, you know, there's a postdoc in there as well that's familiar with these if you're more comfortable talking to them. This is all confidential, but they can share it with anyone that they want. It's just confidential on our end. So this is just a random sample that I pulled out. So when we give them these reports, we'll kind of show them 4 different types of graphs. We'll show them this just basically time activity chart. So within these 2-minute blocks, here's what happened over the entire class period. So the students spent most of the class receiving, but they spent good chunks of time working in the class. And you see that you can get you get a lot of switchback here between the instructors presenting versus guiding. And so these right here are actually from those codes you saw before. These are collapse codes. So these take those codes and kind of say, okay, if students are answering questions or doing classroom discussions, that would be talking to class. So it just kind of gives a nice condensed representation, but we also give them the full sample. So with all the codes that are available, here's what happened in your class. just to give them a nice visual. And then we take it and say, okay, similar to what Marcia had with the TDOP, okay, what percentage of time in class are you spending doing these particular things? So we'll give them this data as a part of the report. So students spent 50% of the time working in class, and instructors spent about an equal amount of time presenting new content and guiding them through activities. And then lastly, we also, again, a full breakout, all the different codes. Here's how much time. I like this one because it kind of lets instructors see too, you know, this class period I tried worksheets. In this class period we were doing a different group activity. You know, how much time are we actually spending when we're doing those clicker questions? Really helps them guide, okay, how do I want to try this next class period? You know, I feel like I'm doing a lot of activities, but then I look at this and realize, no, I'm still actually talking and presenting for a large amount of time. So how can I transition when I'm doing in class to better represent my goals? So this has been a great thing to use on an individual level with Copus. This is the paper I found. I feel like I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, Arbach and Schussler. And they actually used Copus and coded instructors in their biology department looking at their intro level biology courses, similar to what we're doing at KU right now. And really the point of the paper was just showing, you know, here's what instructors are doing in the class. They had already, you know, established at the beginning, we want to be our students to be doing more group work, more active learning in the classroom. And so they used Copus as a way of kind of evaluating how much group work is actually happening in the class. And at the end, they're able to reflect on, okay, well, this isn't where we want it to be at all. So now we're going to use this data to like develop new faculty training so that we can meet the goals that we've set. So this is just a nice representation of how you can use it at a department level. You know, if you have a faculty retreat at the beginning and say, okay, what do we want to do this year? Bring some observations in, see what's actually happening, and then come back and reevaluate, you know, what do we need to do to change? One of their reflections was really that, you know, faculty needed to learn or needed to, you know, needed some training on, you know, what are the different pedagogical approaches we can do to incorporate more group work into the classroom. So I thought that was a nice example of how you can use this at the department level. Ooh. I must have, sorry y'all, I just realized I'm missing a slide. Well, I had one to show you at the institutional level. Let me pull that up for you. I accidentally deleted it. And then we'll go into Lopus. Okay, can you all see this institutional level slide? Someone give me a thumbs up. Okay, sorry about that. So this is just actually, this is trestle data. So this is what we're working on right now. This is specifically just at KU, but this is kind of letting us say, okay, so for part of our model, what we did is we embedded postdocs, we embedded these experts into these departments to work with faculty on how they can transform their classes, make them more active learning. And so with the Copus data, it's been really a nice way to show, okay, so on the left-hand side here, these are the targeted courses. These are the courses that postdocs have been working in. And then on the right are other classrooms across, like in the same department, but that the postdocs aren't working with, and most of them don't have any active learning components within them. So just showing, you know, here's these classes that we're changing, and then here's the comparison courses. And we're seeing big differences in the amount of time that instructors are lecturing and the amount of times that students are working. And I don't have fall 17 data in here yet, but it's, from what I've seen so far, it's kind of really nice to say that, or show that, you know, you can really track it from spring to spring and fall to fall. With our targeted courses, we're getting nice drops in lecturing and big increases increases in students working. So this is something that we can then use to go back to our provost and say, hey, look at the impact that these postdocs are having in these classrooms. Like, this is great. And so this is a nice way to advocate for, we want to continue to promote these active learning classrooms. We're going to be comparing the Copus data as well with things like DFW rates to show, you know, okay, how is this impacting the students as well? So just nice way to add evidence to promote for this change on campus. Is KU using a flipped classroom model to move from lecture to active learning? Yes. Yes. Hey, Dia's on. Sorry, didn't even see you on there. So this is what we're tracking. We're getting COPUS data on each campus. So this is kind of how we're going to kind of look at this from an institution level. Let's look at these comparison courses and these targeted courses. And here's some great evidence to show to our administration, the really awesome impact that these postdocs or these different varieties of models have been having. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show about COPUS, just some ways we can use that to advocate for change. So I'm gonna go back to the first, sorry, my poor kid. Go back to the first PowerPoint. Here we go. And I'm gonna let Bay go ahead and, oh, I have a chat here. Yes, Dina says it works great for both flipped and blended classrooms. Okay. All right, Bay, you go ahead. I'll be flipping the slides for you.
All right, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I'm muted.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I will be talking about LOPUS, which is Laboratory Observation Protocol for Undergraduate STEM. Okay, LOPUS, I like the nice sequence here because LOPUS is actually adapted from COPUS. It was developed by Jonathan at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln from the Department of Chemistry. Here's a reference there. So LOPUS is a relatively new observation tool for lab courses. So just like TDOP and COPUS, it's segmented protocol in 2-minute intervals that has these 4 characters in there. One is that it records the instructional behaviors without assuming about the quality of teaching. So it's just observer recording what's happening in the class without the observer thinking whether it's high quality or low quality. So it doesn't have to, the observer doesn't contribute to that. So the second one is it records both student side as well as the instructor or the TA side. So LOPUS doesn't separate the instructor from the TA. Instead, it actually has the ability to record all instructor as well as multiple TA in one classroom. So next one is it records the nature of interactions between the students and the instructors and the TAs. And it actually also records who initiated the conversation, either from the student side or from the instructor side. Next, please. So this is, we basically use the LOPUS tool from this platform in UC Davis called GORP. So this is the screenshot from GORP. The orange color represents the student behavior. The green represents the instructor and the TA behavior. And it's separated into 3 separate categories. So the first 2 columns on the left-hand side represent any interactive behaviors, including the TAs talking to the students, one-to-one talk, or on the student side, one-to-one SQ representing student approaching the instructor and asking the instructor questions. And so especially on the bottom, the first column, the SI representing this conversation is initiated by the student compared to the TI next to it, which is the instructor or the TA initiating the conversation. So when we look at the data, we look at the percentage of the time where the conversation was initiated by the student or the instructor. We can actually look at the instructional style of the instructor or the TA. So the middle two columns are what's called typical behaviors. Is essentially the instructor or the TA lecturing, writing on the board, doing some demonstration or monitoring, compared to while on the student side, either they are listening to the lectures or doing labs, or sometimes they do take quizzes. So the rightmost two columns are what's called non-instructive or non-interactive behaviors. So including on the instructor side, administrative tasks, or waiting on the instructor side. That is when the instructor or the TA are working on their laptops or looking at the notes when they are not available to the students. And the students SL means the students leave the labs early. And I'll have a couple plots later showing that sometimes the students leave early without making use of the full class time. Can you please flip to the next page, please? Okay, so this is just a table from the Lopez paper showing the more details on the different codes. This is a table for the TA or the instructor behavior in 3 different categories: non-instructive, interactive, or typical. Next, please. And this is a table for student side. So next, please. And this is the nature of verbal interactions or nature of conversations in 5 different categories. Either it's underlying conceptual discussions, or data analysis, data taking, or experimental procedures, equipment, lab related, or safety, or previous lab activities, or quizzes, exams. So this slide shows the progress we've made since we started taking Lopez data about a year and a half ago. So we've come a long way from essentially novices in this, and also because Lopez is relatively newer compared to Copus, the training materials that we received was essentially only we have very basic training materials available at hand when we started. So since then, Natalie Simper from Queen's University has developed detailed code descriptions based on the original Lopez publication. And we are working with Stephanie Chastain from Colorado Boulder to develop consensus code files for the Queen's training video that we have at hand. So for this past 3 semesters, we've been using a computer science lab video that we have here. That's the only thing that we had. The quality of that data is actually not great for Lopez purpose, especially because the instructor did not have a microphone with him, so we couldn't register the nature of conversation. So thanks to Blair, she's worked with a couple of classes at KU, and she now has 2 lab sessions, one in physics and the other one is in earth science. So these 2, we have wider angles of the classroom, and also we do have, we can hear the instructors. So this will allow us to to listen to the nature of conversation. So we will be working with Colorado Boulder in developing consensus code files for these two videos, and hopefully my hope is to have at least one of them ready for the winter observation sessions. Now, one thing to be aware of is that GORP, the Excel output file for Lopus, is missing the nature of conversation data actually. That data is available and it's in the format called JSON, JSON output file. So there are two ways to look at this data. One is Kansas University, Blair is developing a Lopus Excel sheet that is similar to Copus. So you actually use the Excel sheet for doing the observation, and the Excel sheet would allow you to analyze the data right in there. So you have the data and data analysis results right there, all in one place. Now, I've been working with a student here in developing a Python script to look at the JSON output file in GORP. So I should mention in GORP, because it has a timestamp associated with each activity. So in principle, the time duration of each activity within the 2-minute interval, that information is also available as a plus if we use GORP. So I've been exploring a little bit on the possibility of using the timestamp as well, compared to Excel sheet. Well, it has to be a 2-minute interval. So the Python script is recently developed, so we are still in the debugging mode, but I figured that there's a couple preliminary plots that I could show here. This is a student behavior in a third-year lab. On the right-hand side, the plot is x-axis is as it happens in lab. So it started at 3:30 in the afternoon, and it was about 1 hour long or 2 hours long, I can't see, but this is a timestamp on each activity. The y-axis is individual student is the student behavior in different categories. So the green is the non-interactive, the red is the interactive, and the blue is the typical. So as you can see, because it's a lab course, so the majority of the behavior is lab, and we do see a lot of SI, which is student-initiated conversation, and one-to-one SQ is the student approaching instructor and TAs and ask them questions. So the left side plot is the percentage of 2-minute intervals for each of this behavior. Now, next plot is in a comparison lab. It's also a third-year lab course for engineering physics students compared to the other one for physics students. So for this one, the interesting thing, we're still looking at this because these are only a few days old plots. So you can see the percentage of 2-minute intervals of waiting on the student side is quite a bit larger compared to the previous plot. Sorry, Blair, I'm going to ask you to flip back to the other one. So the percentage of the weighting in this course is a lot smaller compared to the other one, although the two lab courses are doing exactly the same lab activity. And students in this course started leaving a lot sooner, which is SL, non-instructive, compared to the other lab. So the message here is that we have a Python script that we're still debugging, but should be up and running in the near future. and we're starting to see some information in here. We are exploring what we can use this data for, and it looks promising. So this last plot is the nature of verbal interaction in 5 different categories, and the y-axis is the percentage of 2-minute intervals. And as expected, the percentage of time spending on talking about experimental dominates compared to analytical or conceptual. So in the original Lopez publication, they actually found out that the nature of conversation is related to what type of lab activity each lab is doing, which is as expected. However, they found the nature of conversation is unrelated to different instructional teaching style. For example, some instructors, we see a lot of monitoring. Some instructors, we see a lot of percentage of time they go approach the students to ask them questions to see how they're doing, compared to some instructors in their labs, it's mostly students approaching them. And the fourth instructoral behavior is waiting, where the instructors are mostly on their laptops or reading to themselves, not available to the students. So the nature of conversation, however, in the original Lopez paper did not have any correlation with the instruction style from the TAs or the instructors. So last slide, I believe. Okay, in summary, we have made pretty good progress on using Lopez, understanding how this protocol works ourselves, developing training materials, developing data taking and data analysis tools, and we are exploring how we can use this data at the moment. That's it.
And one thing with Lopez too, one of the instructors in our physics courses is interested in doing Lopez similar to how Marcia was doing that with the Psych 104 class. She would like to use this to work with her GTAs, since they teach the labs, and kind of give them, use this as a way to kind of give them some evaluations, help them reach their teaching goals. So I think that could be a great application for Lopez that I wanted to throw out there. Okay. I have a list of references. I started filling them out here and then I got distracted. So I'm going to post up a list of references that kind of cover more in detail that you can kind of go to if you want to see how you can use some of these particular types of observation tools. I did want to point out too, these aren't the only ones. There are others that people are developing. Another one that we've played around with at KU is the RTOP. And I can't remember what that acronym stands for right now at the moment. Marcia probably can.
It's the Revised Teaching Observation Protocol.
There you go. That one's a lot more qualitative. And you're really looking at, it's not, you're not using 2-minute windows, but you're saying, in a whole class period, did this happen? And there's a great paper, the Lunge paper here, I really like. It actually takes, they probably observed, I think, over 200 plus classes and did a comparison between, RTOP and COPUS to show that, you can actually take some of your COPUS data and infer what it would have been with an RTOP. So you can kind of say, is this student-centered learning, that kind of thing? Was it Socratic or peer-led? So there are other tools out there. Okay, I'm going to do this so that I can get the chat going up here. Was that to me, Rachel or Robin? So RTOP, I'm going to type it into here too. Everyone. But I suggest if you're looking for something that's more qualitative, more telling you, what kind of instructional style you're doing in the classroom, RTOP is a great one. And UTOP, Undergraduate Teaching Observation Protocol, that's something that the You Can Teach program here at KU uses. And they use that to evaluate, if I remember this correctly, they use that one to evaluate the undergraduates as they're teaching when they're in the classrooms learning how to teach. So that's just kind of something you can use with students to practice with them. There's a new, Dina said there's a new 7-year study that used COPUS and published the results in June 2017. Will you send me the title for that one and I'll add it to that reference list, Dina? We'll get that out there for you all. Are there questions about these tools, or has anyone else used these tools in their courses? I love COPUS. That's because I work with it all day. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. Our next brown bag, just to let you all know, it's either going to be in December or January, and it's going to be about inclusivity. So we're going to have some instructors on there who are going to give you some examples of how they've created assignments that promote diversity in the classroom. So we know for sure we'll have Drew Varsha, who's our postdoc at chemistry here, and then we're reaching out for 1 or 2 other hosts, hopefully from different campuses, to give us a good diversity of instructors as well that can show what they're doing on campus. So be on the lookout for when that'll happen. It'll probably be January timeframe because holidays are just making things a little crazy. So expect January. Let's go for that. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope everyone has, if you're in the States, I hope everyone has a good holiday week, and we will talk to you soon. Yes, Dina, I will write that down on our list of topics. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.